are here. So I think it was, 15, 16 years ago now, my wife and I had the opportunity to travel to Italy. And the other night we were in Vegas. I'm going to talk about Vegas, and we ate at Italy, which I love. But we had the chance to go to Italy a while back, and we spent 7 days in Rome at the time, and I absolutely love food and love Italian food, real Italian food, the way that it is, and it was a great trip. But we decided that one of the things that I wanted to see, that we would take an excursion to Pompeii, because I kind of wanted to see Mount Vesuvius and the volcano and the whole thing, and experience that. So we went to Naples to catch the train to Pompeii and see Mount Vesuvius, and then we saw all that. We came back to Naples, and we thought this was where pizza originated. So we need a slice of pizza here in Naples. And so I can't just find the first slice of pizza. I got to find the best looking slice of pizza. So we're walking. Naples was crazy that year. I mean, crazy. I can't even describe how crazy it was. There was motorcycles up on sidewalks, trash everywhere, because I guess the mafia hadn't decided they were going to clean it up or whatever. And it was insane. But the most insane thing is throughout the entire day, they were treating fireworks like a bigger deal on New Year's Eve than we treat it on the 4th of July. And there was less regulation. And people were dropping what was the equivalent of quarter sticks of dynamite out of windows, okay? And they're just like going off. And the whole day I'm like, nobody gets hit by this. Like, we're fine, walk, do our thing. And but my wife starts crying and like, take me back to Rome. Let's get on the train. We go back to Rome, and now we're looking for dinner. And we stop and we find this amazing dinner. We have this amazing dinner, and we go back to public transportation to get wherever we're going to go next. But we realize that there's a strike that night, and we're not getting back on public transportation. Doesn't matter whether it's a train or bus or whatever. It's over. And so we got the 5-mile walk back. And so we're walking. We're at the far northeast corner. We get up to ancient Rome. I don't know if you're familiar with it, near the Forum, and there's like the biggest rave going on. I've never seen a rave and haven't since then, but it was crazy, okay? It was crazy. People walking around with fifths, just like, whoa, like the typical, like, yeah, I had to pee. So I stop at the porta potty, and I'm just waiting in line, and it happens. What I thought wasn't going to happen happens. And I feel a sharp pain in my back. And there was a welt through my winter coat. Not San Diego winter coat, winter coat, winter coat. And I curled up my fist like this, and I turned around looking for a face to punch. I know, some of y'all are like, you're the pastor, I'm leaving. Right? I was mad. I was so mad. And the reason that I tell you that story, okay, is this, is because I feel like it is socially acceptable for me to tell you that story and to be mad about that situation, right? You know what's not socially acceptable? For me to talk about the times that Kelsey and I have yelled at each other. Or the times I've yelled at my kids, right? Or the times that I've been mad or angry with church people. Come on now. Or friends or neighbors, right? It's just not socially acceptable to talk about those things. But that's where we're going today, y'all. We are in the Sermon on the Mount, the road less traveled. We're getting to the section where Jesus talks about what to do with our anger. Okay, up to this point, we're in week 4 or 5, I don't know, of this series, and we're calling it the road less traveled. Okay, and what we started off with, week 1, is we looked at that small 2 verses in chapter 7, which says there is a broad road that everybody is taking, many people are taking, yet there is a narrow way that few people are taking, and that narrow way is what leads to life. This is Jesus talking about. And so what we've said each and every single week is that adhering to, following the teachings of Jesus is very much like being on that narrow road that leads to life. So we've called this the road less traveled. Okay, and so without further ado, where we've been so far is we've set it up. We've talked about what Jesus talks about as the happy life, the blessed life in week 1 or 2, and then we came back and we talked about what it means to be the salt and the light. And today we actually start to get into some of the commands, some of the things that Jesus instructs and teaches on the road less traveled. So without further ado, I'm going to pray, and we are going to jump into Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 21. Lord, as I pray oftentimes, I pray that you, through your Holy Spirit, Lord, speak into each and every single one of our lives exactly what it is that you want to teach us, Lord. And to take that further, I pray, God, that you would give us the courage to live it out. It's in your name we pray. Amen. I'm reminded as I pray that one of the things that we've said is that the Sermon on the Mount, right, it's the most famous yet least followed sermon ever, right? And part of that is because of the passage that I'm turning to right here. Verse 21 says this, he says, you've heard that it was said to the people long ago. This is Jesus. You've heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder. And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who's angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. And anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. See, this is strong. He comes out the gate strong, doesn't he? This is why it's the most famous yet least followed sermon ever. And one of the things that I see right there, we're going to unpack a bunch that's going on there, but one of the things that I see is that you and I, we live in this tension that Jesus inadvertently addresses, okay, in this passage. We live in this tension, and here's what it is. It's in your note sheet. It's going to be on the screen, is that we often believe that people and circumstances are what make us angry, right? That's what we believe. Yet Jesus, he alludes to it here in this passage, but also in other teachings and passages that he preaches in, and he helps us to see that they only expose the anger that lives inside of us. Right? This is what Jesus, so we're going to talk about, in a minute, we're going to talk about how anger isn't even a primary emotion, it's a secondary emotion. We're going to get there in a few minutes. But let's unpack a few things that are going on right in front of us before we get there. Because every one of these commands that Jesus is going to deal with in the Sermon on the Mount, right here, starting in anger, verse 21, every single one of these are Jesus saying, I am the new Moses. Okay, you have heard that it was said long ago. This was Moses going up Mount Sinai, receiving the word from the Lord, coming down with the tablets and the 10 commandments through which they would preach. And this specific one was, thou shalt not murder. And so Jesus is saying, I'm the new Moses, and I am taking every one of these 10 commands, and I am giving it a fresh look, a fresh perspective. In that fresh perspective, that fresh look has a lot more to do with internal things going on inside of us than external, right? So much of the 10 commands that that Moses were given were, here's how to behave, here's what to do. And Jesus is saying, let me take this behavior a little bit further and let's deal with what's going on the inside. Let's deal with what's going on inside of you internally at the time. And see, Jesus, he takes an external command and deals with the internal problem of it, often like he does so many other times, right? There's this passage that's pretty famous, Matthew chapter 15, and Jesus is speaking to the religious elites at the time. He's speaking to the Pharisees, and at that time there's this argument that's going on. There's this debate that's going on about what makes a person unclean. Because the Pharisees at the time, they're all about behavior. And it's like, don't eat this, and don't eat this, and don't eat this, and eat your food like this, and this is what makes you clean. And Jesus steps onto the scene, and he's like, yo, let's talk about what's new here. Let's talk about what matters here. Let's talk about not the external behavior, but let's talk about the internal stuff that's going on. And he says this, he says, you hypocrites. That's what he says to the religious people. He says, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. And so he calls the whole crowds to him and he says, listen and understand. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them. And so this is Jesus teaching, like, guys, like, there's something more going on in these 10 commandments than what is external. Like, you have heard that it was said, don't murder someone. We're going to go on to this a minute ago. I'm telling you, if you get angry, you're in danger. And we hear that and we're like, come on, Jesus. I didn't murder anybody, but anger, like you're taking it too far, right? And so let me get into this a little bit. Like, okay, the word raka and fool are a little bit confusing, right? And to understand them, I think we first need to understand the word contempt, okay? Because this idea of raka and fool, it has a lot to do with us showing contempt. So contempt, what it means is that we disregard something that we should regard, that we ignore. We're just like, whatever. Or that we look at someone as though they are beneath or less than us. Okay? That's contempt. So this idea of raka that Jesus is talking about, if you go back to the original language, it almost seems like fool, but this idea of raka is you have contempt for someone's ignorance or their intelligence. So it's like, man, what an idiot. Can't believe they think that, believe that, whatever. And so it's this contempt for their intelligence. This word fool is this idea of contempt for their character. Okay? So it's like, oh, you just do stupid things. Like you must be stupid because the way that you live is stupid, right? Like you must be stupid because the way you think is stupid. You must be stupid because the way you live is stupid, right? And this is raka and fool. And Jesus says anybody who says these things is going down a road that he is equating to murder. This is why it's not that followed, yet very famous. It's shocking, right? As he says this. And so the idea, okay, that I want to kind of unpack and get to from this passage is that anger can be a redemptive gift, but it's too often a destructive power. Okay? So anger, it can be a redemptive gift that is given to us, yet it is often a destructive power. Because anger, okay, as I kind of alluded to a minute ago, anger, it's a secondary emotion. Does anybody know what I'm talking about when I say this? Like a lot of counselors, therapists are starting to understand this and bring this to the light, but anger, it's not the primary emotion that you have, it's a secondary emotion, meaning that there is typically something that happens between you and another person where they do something, say something, or whatever, and all of a sudden it makes you feel a certain way, and then you are over here and you're like, I'm just angry, or I'm just mad, I'm just frustrated at them, right? Golly, raka, fool. They're just so ignorant based on the way they believe, or they're ignorant in the way they behave, right? Based on these things. And so it's this, but we have to understand it's a secondary emotion. There's an emotion that's over here that's the true emotion that causes the anger, right? And so I wanted to give you a few of them. Maybe it's feelings of over here, you feel embarrassed. And because you got embarrassed, you got angry, right? Or maybe it's insecurity, maybe it's loneliness, maybe it's feelings of being left out, maybe it's feelings of being stupid, maybe feelings of rejection or being unappreciated or just being annoyed or jealous or taking advantage of or whatever. But it's like there's a primary emotion over here that brings its way to anger. And the point is that whenever we have these primary feelings, it can start to put us on a path of destruction. It can put us on a path of destruction. And here's why. Because if you get back into the original language of what Jesus is talking about with this idea of anger, okay, it's not acute anger. It's not like this anger that happens and you're like, you identify like, oh yeah, whatever, and you move on. Like that happens to all of us, right? Like we all get mad, like, you know what I mean? Like I've shared this several times, and Monica right here just had to go and be that person. I get angry, whenever people cut me off getting onto the 805 freeway off of Palm Avenue. And I'm like in that lane, and I'm just like, I'm ready to turn right and get on the freeway. And then all this string of cars come in last minute. And I preached and said that one day, and then she went and did it to me like 3 days later on purpose. But that's not the anger that Jesus is talking about. The anger that he is referencing is anger that is ongoing and can escalate, okay? What he's talking, like, that's why, you heard that it was said murder. Like, that's the end of the thing, murder, right? But like what Jesus is talking about is this anger that starts here, okay? And it doesn't, like, we don't deal with it, or it doesn't move on, but it's ongoing, and can escalate into something down the road, right? And I think about this for, like, just as examples I can share with Kelsey and I, like, maybe we are triggered together in our marriage over an emotion that, maybe we've been annoyed at somebody, or feel taken advantage of, or we feel like we've been talked about behind our back, or something like that. And then we get angered a bit, and inevitably what we have done, Kelsey and I have done in the past, is we've talked about that, okay, with each other, and then not dealt with it, or not ended it. And then all of a sudden, like, you have this conversation on a Sunday night, and it's like, oh my, can you believe that person that just behaved this way, or thought this way, or did this, or whatever? And we talk about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, that's Sunday night, and then it's like Tuesday night, you're like, man, they did it again. Like, that idiot, right? And then Tuesday night turns into Thursday night. Thursday night turns into Saturday night. Saturday night turns into next Tuesday night, right? And it's this conversation that continues to go. And as long as it's not dealt with, it can escalate all the way up into just like continual anger, right? Continual anger, like it grows. And I think for some people, I'm not going to say this is us, but I think for some people, this is where it can begin to escalate, right? And it's not, and maybe it's not murder, right? I mean, murder's down there, and that's why we all like read the 10 Commandments. We're like, I'm good, I didn't murder anybody. And I think that's the reason Jesus says, hey, it starts right here. It starts with the emotion of anger, because it starts to set you down a path that if it is ongoing and escalates, it can turn into your behavior. It can turn into snubs, quiet treatment, cold shoulders, actual ugly words, berating, condescension. So many different things can happen as a result of that festering and ongoing anger that we can have, right? And see, the real problem is, and we've already talked about it, is this anger then, what it does is it causes us to treat people with contempt. It causes us to treat people with contempt. It causes us to treat people as though they are less than or beneath us, right? Now, I think about this, and we had the opportunity to go to Vegas this last week, and we stayed at Mandalay Bay, and I had a conference, and the family tagged along, and I had some breaks and times to spend some time with the kids at the lazy river, or as we called it, the crazy river, whenever my two youngest got in, because they just made it crazy. And so we're hanging out at the crazy river, and my wife and I had the opportunity just to do some people watching and let our oldest take our youngest around and stuff. And sure enough, as the weekend came, the place started to get a lot busier, and travel sports, I guess, we're going to take over the place this weekend, as well as the Chiefs-Raiders game today, as well as the Boise State UNLV game that was the other day, and all this stuff. And so there's fans everywhere and people everywhere. And let's just call her Travel Mom, right? Travel Mom's here with her travel kids playing travel baseball. And she's got a bunch of 12-year-olds that she's looking after. One's her own that we can figure out from watching the exchanges. And she's trying to corral a bunch of 12-year-old boys through the lazy river. And then we have Chiefs fan over here, okay, who's visiting for the weekend. And part of the story I didn't tell you yet was that they don't rent out the rafts there that you take around the lazy river. Like, you either got to go without a raft or buy one. And it's out of season, so you can't go to the store. So they're $37.93 to get a raft. So we got one for my 4 kids to share, right? So one raft is like, here you go, knock yourself out, kids, and stuff. So I tell you that to tell you this, is that there's not a lot of rafts around because nobody's paying $37.93 for a raft. okay? And so a bunch of 12-year-old boys, or what are they gonna do? What I have done when I was 12? I would have stole giraffes, right? It's another one we're coming up on. Commands, right? So this 12-year-old boy steals this raft, and he's going through the lazy river. A Chiefs fan comes over, finds his wife's name on the raft, and berates this lady. And it's just like, Kelsey and I were like, we got a front row seat. We're just watching the whole thing unpack. And he's ripping her up one side, down the other, and she's just like, you know. And sure enough, like whenever she leaves, or whenever he leaves, she has some choice words to say with her 12-year-olds in tow following. I can't repeat them here, about what he was. And you just had contempt everywhere in that situation. I tell you that, I mean, like, fast forward another morning. I don't know what it is about Mandalay Bay, right? There's a bunch of angry people. But I'm on a treadmill, and there's 4 treadmills that work, one that doesn't, one that looks like it works, but it doesn't work, and I know that. And I go in, 4 are taken, this one's whatever, and I'm like, you know, in my townhome community, we have broken treadmills all the time. Let me try the old power on, power off, pull the plug, put it back in, and sure enough, I do it all, it works. Yet there is a beep. So I'm running, and the thing goes beep, 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 beep. And I'm like, you know what? I care about getting my workout in before I get back on the road yesterday, you know, to come home from Vegas. I care about getting my workout in more than this beep, so y'all are gonna have to deal with it in here, right? And so I look around, and you know, most people have headphones in, right? There's a couple guys over here, and they don't care. The place is packed, but there's one guy, okay? And he starts to look at me. And he's on an elliptical machine, and he's like starting to look at me like this. And so I'm like 5 minutes into my run, and then a lady gets off the treadmill, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'll go take the good one. But I've created a monster treadmill over here, so the next lady gets on, okay, she gets on, beep, 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 beep. She doesn't care either. She's got her headphones in, and nobody else cares in the room. She's got her husband's walking around doing whatever. He doesn't care. Nobody cares. I don't care. My headphones are in. And I look at this guy. I feel like I'm the only one looking. And she runs for 15 minutes. And he moves from like being annoyed to seething in like 15 minutes. Like to the point where he's like trying to grab their attention. He's, he's just like so mad. And the husband's like, like walking around. The wife doesn't even care. And I'm just like, this is a free show to anger and contempt. He did not enjoy his workout yesterday. Okay, I tell you that story. Okay, I tell you those stories because once again, like the Italy story, they are much easier to share than the harder stories around us, right? Because y'all, we're getting into election season. I've mentioned that a million times. And that's one of the many ways that we can fall prey, right? When we sit in front of our TVs and we watch the talking heads, right? Can you believe they're so stupid? Those people are so... And then we go out and we're like, those people, they're so stupid. I mean, they behave this way, they think this way, they act this way. Oh my gosh, can you believe them? Those morons. Right? And Jesus is saying, be careful. Be very careful. Because anyone who says, Raka, you're an idiot, is going down a path that's dangerous. Anyone who says, you fool, the way you behave, is going down a path that is dangerous. Because anger can be a redemptive gift, but all too often it's a destructive power. You may be asking right now, how can it be a gift? Let me tell you how it can be a gift. Our anger is like a mirror that tells us what we care about, isn't it? And I think for many of us, it's hard to say. I think for many of us, we could not say that the things that anger God are the things that anger us, and the things that please God are the things that please us. Because for many of us, the things that anger us are internally, selfishly motivated. I'm just one guy preaching to the choir, right? Like, I'm not like condemning you more than me as I say that. But the things that make us mad, they reveal a lot about ourselves. Like, is what makes us mad, is it selfish? Is it motivated by you rubbed up against the way that I wanted to be presented or feel or whatever, and so I'm mad and it shows that? Or is it like, okay, you got to some values, or you got to some injustices in the world, or you got to like some things that are absolutely wrong in the way we treat other people? Because there is good anger, right? We said that what Jesus is talking about in this passage is anger that is ongoing and escalates. But what we saw from the life of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, that he got very angry, right? He did. You know who he got angry at? Super religious people who had no compassion for others, right? Over and over and over, people like were showing contempt towards others or holding out their religion or you know whatever, and he's just like, you guys, and he flips tables and he gets mad and he gets upset and he gets angry about it. See, Jesus got angry, and he got angry about injustice. And our anger really can help guide us towards what is going on internally inside of us. It's a mirror towards what we care about. But the truth of the whole book, the truth of the gospel, the truth of everything that Jesus teaches is this, okay? It's that God's love can free us from the grip of sinful anger and transform our anger into compassion. It can. That's the whole story. When I think about this for a second, it's like, man, okay. Let me lay this over the text that we're reading, okay? We come today and some of us lift up our hands, some of us close our eyes, some of us have an introspective moment to ourselves and we sing, "Worthy is your name, Jesus. Worthy to be praised. Worthy is your name." That is beautiful. It's beautiful, but think about this for a second. We serve a Savior who was hated. That he disrupted the religious system of the day. He disrupted the Jewish system as it is going on, and people got mad, and they hated him for it. And the Roman authorities at the time were like, "Oh, why are you guys so mad? We don't get it. We're indifferent. Like, whatever. Let's have a trial. But come on, this guy didn't really do much. Like, here, we'll let you free somebody. Why don't you take the murderer back?" And they're like, "No, we'll keep the murderer and don't kill him. Kill that Jesus guy, right? Kill him." And so they take Jesus off, and he's beat unrecognizably. And then he's hung on a cross in the noonday sun by nails. And with his last and final breaths, what does he do? Prays for the people who did it. And for you and I. Down the road. And it's like, this is a picture of how much he loves his people. Right? And I know, like, in a room like this, and I was this person forever, but it's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why would he have to do that? Like, why? Because couldn't God just wave some kind of magic wand over humanity and just be like, just here's a different way to be forgiven and to have hope that you can turn toward, as we say? And the answer God would have is, like, you don't want a God like that. I am just. And to be just requires justice. And so it's you or him, bro. Ma'am, what you want it to be? I will offer him as a payment for you. as a example or an act of how much I love you. And the reality is whenever we get that love, whenever it permeates our lives, then and only then can we give it out to other people. The problem is that for far too long, church has just been filled with church people who follow tradition and are a lot of ought tos, like, oh, we ought to do this, or we traditionally do this, or we think we should do this, or we feel that if we behave this way or check these boxes or dot these I's or cross these T's that we're good with God, right? And God's like, no, first and foremost, I need you to get how much I love you. I need you to get it. Because when that seeps into you, then and only then can you love people the way that I'm asking you to. Right? And I think about that, and it's like, man, you are so loved. And I think this is why Jesus continues on in his teaching. We've only covered 2 verses. We're about done, trust me, but these last 2 verses that I want to go to today are very important. Because it says this, it says, therefore, Jesus, he says, after you'll be in danger, verse 23, he says, therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar. Can we stop there for a second? It says, therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar. Can I give you a translation for what that means? Therefore, if you're coming to church on Sunday morning at church 180, as a gift of worship to God. See, this is hard for us. This is hard for us in our society and our culture today because, as I've explained sociologically over the last 40 years, we have made a shift in our mentality to where we believe the church is for us, which it kind of is. It's for us to be consumed, right? That we come because we consume products, we consume entertainment, we consume food, we consume all these things. So church is no different in many of our eyes, in many of our contexts, that it's this product that we consume. And so we come and we're like, well, I just need to be fed, or I just need a connection, or I just need whatever, and I just need, I need, want, all these different things as we come through. That's why we have church shopping and church whatever and church, whatever. And so we come and we look at it as this product that we consume, and Jesus stops you and he says, therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar, meaning that there's something transactional about you coming and bringing to God something that's pleasing. Right here. And he says, therefore, if you are coming to church and you are offering your gift at the altar, and there, remember that your brother or sister has something against you. Leave your gift there in front of the altar. And so first, go and be reconciled to them, and then come and offer your gift. You get that? Jesus is saying reconciliation here is more important than church. I mean, church is important. Like, you need it. Like, I mean, we're not we're not one of those places that's like, oh, yeah, you gotta get your butt in your seat, attendance and all this stuff. But I'm just saying, like, you miss too many Sundays, and chances are you're not gonna be living for Jesus. Because the world has a way of beating the crap out of us, doesn't it? And making us live different ways. And getting us all sideways. But there's something about church that's presenting our gift to God, and God's saying, I don't want your gift if you're not gonna make things right with the people in your life. I don't want your worship. I don't want your communion. I don't want any of this if you're going to be a person of contempt towards other people. If you're going to belittle other people or make them less than or not show them regard, does that make sense? I mean, Jesus is saying, I don't want it. So I wrote it this way. We can't be good with God without doing our part to be good with others. It just doesn't exist. We cannot be good with God without doing our part to be good with others. That's how he ends. And so here's what we're going to do. Band, you guys can go ahead and come on up. We're going to take communion today. And I'm going to do something a little different than first service. All I want to do in closing today is I want to pray for you, and I want to pray for me. And I want you to think about this during communion. Communion's where we are grateful to God for the sacrifice that he made that I talked about on the cross. We take a little cracker that represents the body of Jesus that was broken, a little juice that represents the blood of Jesus that was spilled out. We do this every single week, and I'm going to ask you at any point during this last song, you can go back to one of these tables, grab it, and take it with us. But during this time, I would love it for you to be searching your heart for how you can do your part to be good with the people in your life. Right? And in doing that, I'm going to pray for us collectively that we would be a church full of people that do the right thing and make things right in our lives with people. God, I sense that what we need most is to feel your love. And so, Lord, I pray that over this next song, over this next week, Lord, that many of us in this room, that we could let your love permeate our lives. And Lord, let